Tonight, President Biden warning of a white supremacy threat after that mass shooting at a grocery store in Buffalo. The president meeting with the victims' families today after at least 10 people were killed just because of their race. The president calling the shooting terrorism, and now police revealing the 18-year-old suspect allegedly posted in online chats that he was looking for places with a high number of black Americans, including an elementary school. The heartbroken son of a victim joins Top Story in just moments. Trump's Pennsylvania test, all eyes on that state as voters decide on a close Republican Senate primary. Dr. Oz scoring Trump's endorsement, but the former TV doctor in a three-way fight for the nomination. Is the party moving away from the former president? Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, the frontrunner John Fetterman casting an emergency ballot from the hospital after suffering a stroke. Dasha Burns in Pennsylvania for us. Intentional crash? The alarming new report saying a pilot deliberately sent a China Eastern jet nosediving into mountains, killing all 132 people on board. What the black boxes allegedly revealed about the flight's final moments. Mariupol lost, the last Ukrainian soldiers ordered to leave the critical port city, effectively handing control over to Russia. How the significant victory could change the state of the war. New UFO video, the Pentagon revealing new footage of a mysterious metallic object in the sky as Congress holds the first hearing on UFOs in more than 50 years. Are officials any closer to an explanation? And the moment an Atlanta SWAT officer rushed to the aid of a 4-month-old baby who stopped breathing, what he did to save that child's life. Top Story starts right now. And good evening. Confronting hate. President Biden visiting Buffalo today after a racist attack at a grocery store left at least 10 people dead. The president and first lady laying flowers at a growing memorial there. The president warning of the, quote, poison of white supremacy. After meeting with families of the victims senselessly killed at a Top supermarket over the weekend, the president also calling the shooting terrorism as authorities revealed the 18-year-old suspect visited the store prior to the attack, which he planned for months and may have considered other locations, including an elementary school. And tonight, the son of one of the victims, who also met with President Biden today, joins Top Story Live to talk about his mother, who was also a grandmother and a breast cancer survivor. We'll get to that in just a few moments, but first we begin with Emily Aketa, who leads us off from Buffalo.
Evil will not win, I promise you.
Today, President Biden and the First Lady near the Tops grocery store at the memorial site for 10 people killed in a hate-fueled shooting rampage as they shopped on a Saturday afternoon.
White supremacy is a poison, and it's been allowed to fester and grow right in front of our eyes.
President Biden denouncing hate and again pushing for stricter gun control.
We can keep assault weapons off our streets. We've done it before.
And tonight, we're learning more about the 18-year-old suspect's months-long preparation for his twisted attack. NBC News has reviewed a series of online rants on the chat forum Discord, which appear to be written by the suspect, where he describes his reconnaissance mission at the store back in March, detailing how he mapped out the store's aisles, was confronted by a store security guard for repeatedly entering the store, and considered a school and churches as other possible targets he thought would have high percentages of black people.
You think you've seen the suspect before?
No, I know I saw him. He was in my store.
Rose Wasaki is a produce manager at Tops.
He had said to me, "You're out of place here. You look like you belong out in the suburbs."
On the day of the shooting spree, she took cover in a conference room.
I could hear that then it was just like massive gunshots, just massive, and you could hear them getting closer and closer and closer.
While nearby, 8-year-old London Thomas hid behind her dad as the suspect opened fire.
We all ran to the back, like at the place where the milk freezes at, and then he was shooting at the milk, and then the milk was like linking through the middle.
The staggering loss here is heartbreaking. Roberta Drury, Marcus Morrison, Andre McNeil, Aaron Salter, Celestine Cheney, Hayward Patterson, Catherine Massey, Pearl Young, Ruth Whitfield, and Geraldine Talley. Talley's sister describing her final moments shopping with her fiancé.
He said bullets were actually flying by his head. And I do believe at that time, my sister was already shot.
The stories from all these families are just so heartbreaking. Emily Aketa joins us now from Buffalo. Emily, that grocery store behind you, it played such a key role in the community. It was in what many people call a food desert, where it's very difficult for people of a certain area to find food. How are local officials trying to help the residents out right now?
Good evening, Tom. This area has already received an outpouring of help, including several giveaways lining the streets behind me. The state has also partnered with ride-sharing companies to help transport members of this community for free to other grocery stores. Keep in mind, this was the sole supermarket for a lot of people in this neighborhood within walking distance. Tom?
Such an important part of that community. All right, Emily Aketa leading us off tonight. Wayne Jones joins us now. His mother, Celestine Cheney, was among those killed in Saturday's shooting, and he met with President Biden today. Wayne, first, I'm so sorry for your loss. Tell me what you heard from President Biden during your meeting with him today.
It was very comforting. You know, he felt like he was family. You know, didn't feel like it was like a photo op or nothing like that. It felt like family. He discussed what he wanted to do and what he was trying to do and what he did before. He said, I've got assault weapons off the street before, so it just takes Congress to act, and we could probably do it again.
Wayne, you know, there are so many mass shootings in this country, and I really don't want people to sort of gloss over this one or ever forget this one, right? We should never forget any of these mass shootings. I want you to tell our viewers how you learned of your mother's death.
Well, I was at home, and my daughter sent me a still photo of my mom. Well, I didn't know it was my mom at the time, but she said, somebody sent me a photo, Mom, Dad. Why don't you check and see if this is Grandma? I don't know what Grandma had on that day, but if you could check and let me know. So I said, send me the photo, let me see. Yeah, he sent me the photo, and it was my mom laying on her back with the barrel of his gun, like, pointed towards her.
Wayne, what was it like to see that image? I mean, it's something that's unimaginable.
Yeah, and then it was unimaginable, and then about an hour later, someone sent me the video. So I actually seen the whole thing play out on video.
So you have sort of had to live through this sick and tortured nightmare, likely still suffering at this point. We're learning a lot more about the shooter and how he was radicalized online. What are your thoughts about all the warning signs that were missed?
It's a massive amount of people online. Like, you know, only thing about that, you gotta go, you're in the way. Only thing about, it's hard, there's so many people online and doing so many things, so it's kind of hard. But I know they could do a better job, because like if you show a nipple online, they take it right down. So I don't know why my mother's shooting had to be online for days and still is online.
Are you angry?
I'm sad and angry, but I'm angry at him. I'm not angry at anybody else. I'm angry at the guy that did it.
Wayne, what kind of change would you like to see? I mean, and we ask these questions after all these mass shootings, and I've covered so many of these, and I ask that to people like you who have been affected personally by these things. I mean, what can we do as a country to change?
I mean, as a country, we just need to stay strong, and we need to get some gun control. Like, I mean, we've been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. After the kids in Sandy Hook, we just keep talking about it. Nothing ever happens. So I don't know what it's going to take. Like, we just had the big riot January 6th. Like, what if they'd have started shooting there? Like, it's unreal that you can buy assault weapons in America, because there's no other reason for assault weapons but to kill Americans.
Wayne, before you go, I said I don't want people to forget about this shooting. We shouldn't forget about any mass shootings. What do you want people to remember about your mother?
Man, she was a sweet person. She loved everybody, and she loved to shop. And like most older women, they love to shop. And I want everybody to continue to go out on Saturdays, the older women, and shop. And don't let them win. The fear will let them win. If you're scared, that's what they want us to be, scared, and not to come out and not. No, just, you know, we just keep the faith and keep going.
Wayne Jones, whose mother, Celestine Cheney, was killed in that massacre. Wayne, we are sorry for your loss, and we thank you for your time. All right, we want to turn now to politics, where we're watching key races on this primary election night. A look to where the nation's political winds may be blowing. A new NBC News poll finds 3/4 of Americans say the country is on the wrong track. So what does that mean for the midterms this fall? Dasha Burns reports from Pennsylvania.
How are you feeling?
Conservative commentator Kathy Barnett headed to the polls today, hoping to capitalize on her late surge in this tight Senate primary. Barnett made claims of election rigging and voter fraud in 2020, but a different message today.
Can the voters you're asking to turn out for you today trust this process and trust in the results of this primary?
You know what? We all have such a wonderful opportunity. Make sure you're coming out and voting. Don't allow anything to discourage you.
Her rivals in the race bringing big names and big money.
What if this? I'll give it to you.
Celebrity doctor Mehmet Oz received Donald Trump's endorsement, but hasn't been able to capitalize on it.
Why aren't you running away with this thing?
35 million reasons why I haven't run away with the election, but I'm in the lead and I will win on Tuesday. There's a lot of outside money coming in, people that are uncomfortable with an outsider like me.
Businessman David McCormick pushing his America First message, even as he's taken shots from former President Trump.
At a rally recently, he said that you were more Pat Toomey than MAGA. What do you say to that?
Well, listen, I knew when I get into this race it'd be rough and tumble, right? I knew the president would double down, and I think that's what's happening.
On the Democratic side, frontrunner John Fetterman casting an emergency ballot today from the hospital after suffering a stroke.
We're not different than any other family. We're facing a health scare like so many other Americans do.
His wife, Giselle, will headline his event tonight as the candidate himself remains hospitalized, set to have a pacemaker implanted.
All right, Dasha Burns joins us now from Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. Dasha, I feel like you've been living in Pennsylvania for the past few months. I'd like to ask you about the candidate that you mentioned at the top of your story running in the Republican primary, conservative commentator Kathy Barnett. Do you know why she's been surging? And I understand she's faced some tough questions about her biography, the one that her campaign put out.
Yeah, Tom, we're actually at Kathy Barnett's election night party right now. Some of her supporters are just starting to trickle in. And I think her surge is due to a couple of factors here that we've seen on the ground. First, for months, the two frontrunners, McCormick and Oz, have been bashing each other on the airwaves. And it seems, according to the conversations I've had with voters, that the effect that's had is basically to sour voters on both of those candidates. I've really heard a lot of resistance to both Oz and McCormick when I've been talking to folks for months here. People feeling like they are outsiders, like they are bringing big money, and I felt like voters were really looking for that third option. And the other thing that happened is at the same time as we had the Supreme Court leak on the Roe v. Wade opinion, Barnett's story really caught fire with some voters here that are really focused on the abortion issue. Barnett has a personal story that her mother was raped when she was 11 years old. That is how Barnett was conceived. She talks about that personal story on the campaign trail. She has a very emotional video that her campaign put out, and it really seems like she's fired up that base of voters, and the momentum really hit right at the right moment here, Tom.
And Dasha, what happened with issues about her biography?
Yeah, so when you step into that front runner status, Tom, of course, you're going to start facing some attacks, and some of her past controversial comments have resurfaced, including some Islamophobic and homophobic tweets. We asked her about those. One of them I pointed out to her in an interview about, she tweeted that Islamophobia is a cornerstone of Islam. She denied that that tweet was hers. We also recently reported on images of Barnett at the Capitol on January 6th. She was marching toward the Capitol alongside known members of the Proud Boys. And her opponents have also been asking her questions about her military record. She says she served for 10 years, but there have been questions around that. There have been questions around her status as a professor at a university. And these are all things that are coming out right at the last minute here. The question is, are they going to have an impact on voters? We will hopefully hopefully find out soon enough here, Tom.
Finally, Dasha, just quickly here, I saw you pressing Dr. Oz there about why he's not running away with this. He has President Trump's endorsement. President Trump won that state in 2016. He barely lost in 2020. And he's faced some criticism about where he actually lives, Dr. Oz.
Yeah, that's the biggest question that comes up in voter conversations that I've had about Dr. Oz. They say they know who he is, but they're confused about why he's running for political office and why he's doing it in Pennsylvania. When we did our research on him, we found that he lived in and was registered to vote in New Jersey until last year. And I think that is where a lot of that voter resistance comes from. Also, they see him as sort of a flip-flopper on certain issues. That's certainly something that the ads have had an effect on. A lot of ads here in Pennsylvania calling him a rhino, a Republican in name only. And listen, he has a record on his show. He said a lot of things on television, right? So unlike some of the other candidates, voters have a lot of history to look back on with Oz.
Dasha Burns from the campaign trail tonight. Dasha, thank you for that. And Pennsylvania isn't the only state with a primary tonight. Voters in Oregon, Idaho, Kentucky, and North Carolina all taking to the polls today, deciding some hotly contested elections drawing national attention. For more analysis on those races, I want to bring in Kristen Welker, who joins us now from Washington. So, Kristen, what races are you most interested in? But let's start with Pennsylvania, because that's where all eyes are on tonight.
Let's start with Pennsylvania. It is really the center of the political universe, Tom. There's no doubt about that. Look, before we get to the individual races, just a note about the backdrop. Our latest NBC News poll shows that 75% of voters believe that the country is going in the wrong direction. And so that is a bad climate for incumbents and, frankly, for the establishment. And we're really seeing that play out in Pennsylvania, particularly when you look at the race for Senate to replace Pat Toomey. First, on the Democratic side, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman is a Bernie Sanders supporter, someone who is considered to be a progressive, even though he's now in the lead in that race. So he's sort of been tacking to the center a little bit more. A couple of months ago, people would not have thought he'd be running away with this race, but he is. Now, of course, as you've been reporting on, he has suffered a last-minute stunning twist to this with the fact that he had a stroke. He's not going to be at his rally tonight, but he really underscores this tension. A couple months ago, you may have thought that Connor Lamb, a representative from Western Pennsylvania, would be the person who's in the lead right now, but that is not the case. On the Republican side, it is a three-way race, and in many ways, Tom, it's a fight for these candidates to try to determine who's the Trumpiest, who's the more MAGA candidate. Now, celebrity Dr. Oz has actually been endorsed by former President Trump, but Pennsylvania voters say that there are a lot of questions about what he stands for and his policies. Former hedge fund manager David McCormick is running very close with Dr. Oz. And then talk about a twist. Kathy Barnett, who is a conservative commentator, has come from behind. She's surging in the polls right now. She's African-American. She's a mother of two, and she is an absolutist when it comes to the issue of abortion, which, as you know, has really been in the spotlight right now. She says she opposes abortion in all instances because she herself was the product of a rape. Now, moderate establishment Republicans a little concerned that in a general election, those three candidates might not be as competitive as they would like. The White House watching this race very closely, Tom. They see Pennsylvania as their best chance for a pickup state. And as you know, it's really a dismal environment right now for Democrats with President Biden's poll numbers at a new low.
You know, Kristen, I also want to ask you about North Carolina. I know you're following the races there closely, especially a certain House race that a lot of Republicans are going to be watching.
North Carolina 11, Madison Cawthorn's district. He is fighting to hold on to his seat there. He has been incredibly controversial. He's had a few run-ins with the law, including for speeding without a driver's license. He has been featured in some risque photos. He's also accused some of his fellow members of Congress, without naming names, of using drugs. Those are things that have infuriated establishment Republicans here in Washington. But again, he's someone who was endorsed by former President Trump. Trump is saying, let's give him a second chance. We'll have to see if he can pull it out. He's running against State Senator Chuck Edwards, who's been endorsed by the senator there, Tom Tillis. And so Tillis is really making a strong argument for the fact that it is time for change in North Carolina. We'll have to see what happens. But big picture here, Tom, when you look at the Madison Cawthorn race, it raises questions about Trump's might and staying power versus the quality of these candidates. He is clearly a candidate who has stumbled over and over again. Will Trump's endorsement be enough to get him over the finish line? That's one of the things we'll be watching for tonight, Tom.
And we will be watching you, Kristen. We thank you for that. You can join Kristen and Chuck Todd for the Meet the Press Election Night special tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, featuring in-depth coverage and analysis of tonight's primary election results right here on NBC News Now. All right, we want to head overseas now to the war in Ukraine as it rages on. And tonight, a major victory for Russia. President Zelensky ordering the final Ukrainian troops to leave Mariupol, ending months of intense fighting for control of the key port city. Richard Engels in Ukraine again tonight.
In the end, hunger and injuries won out over bravery. More than 200 Ukrainian fighters bunkered down for weeks beneath the Mariupol steel factory surrendered to Russian troops. They'd fought even though they were outnumbered and surrounded as Russian troops bombed the city relentlessly, destroying a theater where hundreds of children were sheltering and a maternity hospital. The steel factory was their last holdout, their Alamo. But it couldn't last forever. The fighters, including many seriously wounded, were bused to a Russian-controlled enclave in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Zelensky said combat operations in Mariupol are over for now. Ukraine needs Ukrainian heroes alive. That's our principle, he said. The Ukrainian government said they'll be part of a prisoner swap. But Russia said tonight it's considering labeling the Ukrainian soldiers members of a terrorist group and will investigate each fighter for possible crimes against civilians. It appears to be Russia's way of pressuring Ukraine not to put more Russian soldiers on trial for war crimes.
Tom, the loss of Mariupol is a significant blow for Ukraine and a victory for Russia, which now controls its first major city in this country since Russia invaded Ukraine nearly 3 months ago. Tom?
Richard Engel for us tonight. Richard, we thank you. A major update tonight on that deadly plane crash in southern China. You may remember, the Wall Street Journal now reporting it was intentional. Video shows the plane nosediving into a mountainous region back in March. The report says 2 black boxes recovered from the scene indicate someone inside the cockpit deliberately pushed the Boeing into a near vertical descent while cruising at a high altitude. All 132 people on board were killed. All right, now to stunning new numbers from the U.S. Mexico border. New court documents show that more than 234,000 migrants tried to cross into the U.S. in April, surpassing March's 22-year high. This as U.S. officials announced the discovery of a drug smuggling tunnel. Take a look at this, the length of 6 football fields. This right here connects Tijuana to San Diego. NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now. She covers the Department of Homeland Security and DOJ. So, Julia, tell us more about the latest numbers and how this compares to recent months.
Well, it is now the 4th time in the Biden administration that they've crossed 200,000 encounters in a month. That's encounters with undocumented immigrants, those who are trying to cross illegally, and those who present themselves legally at a port of entry. To put this into perspective, we're now looking at more than 7,000 immigrants a day being encountered at the border. When Secretary Jay Johnson was in charge under the Obama administration, he said his red line was 1,000 a day. So now we're far past that. And according to internal CBP numbers that NBC News obtained, actually it is staying consistent and moving up a little bit. This month, we're looking at 7,400 border encounters per day, Tom.
Julia, remind our viewers, because you've been covering this for so long, what's going to happen now that the weather gets a little better, maybe a little warmer as we head into summer?
Well, typically when it gets really hot, we'll see those numbers come down because it's such a risk for these immigrants who are trying to make this dangerous journey on foot. You know, those 100, 110 degree plus days, that can put them at risk for death. But I have to say, I was at the border around this time last year in June and August, some of the hottest days I've seen down there, and that wasn't deterring a lot of migrants, simply because we're now looking at global shifts in migration. Some people who are so desperate to come not only from the Central American countries we've seen before, but Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, places that have seen political, natural disaster, and economic crises over the past years. They're now desperate to come to the United States, and they're finding new ways to get here, Tom.
So when the pandemic hit, we'll remember the Trump administration enacted Title 42, which essentially sent a lot of people back, a lot of these migrants back because of COVID. They didn't want to overcrowd some of the detention centers they had there. What do we think is going to happen once Title 42 is lifted, of course, pending a decision from a district judge?
Well, it's interesting. People I've spoken to at DHS say it's no longer seen as this doomsday scenario because they're really only enforcing Title 42 less than 50% of the time right now. That's simply because Mexico can't always take these people back. The shelters are overcrowded. And so the numbers that we saw just last month, for example, they're actually recounting a lot of migrants who are pushed back into Mexico under Title 42, and they're trying again. Under normal circumstances, we don't see nearly as many repeat offenders because when someone's deported back to their home country, it's much harder for them to come again, and it's a felony to do so. Under Title 42, they can keep retrying again and again to see if they might have better luck. But yes, they are expecting these numbers to go up when Title 42 is lifted. That's expected to be on Monday if we don't have an injunction from a judge either in Texas or Louisiana before that, Tom.
All right, Julia, thank you for that. Still ahead tonight, emotional testimony, tensions running high in the legal battle between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. The parts of Heard's past that Depp's lawyers brought up in court today. Plus, the manhunt for the suspects who killed an 11-year-old girl in broad daylight in New York City. The new video showing the alleged shooters on a moped. And the footage just released of UFO sightings. What we're learning from Congress, his first hearing on the matter in more than 50 years. Stay with us. All right, we are back now with the defamation trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Heard on the stand for a second day of tense cross-examination. Depp's legal team pressing Heard on what they see as inconsistencies in her testimony. Heard's lawyers trying to refute those claims. NBC's Steve Patterson has been following it all for us.
Tonight, Amber Heard entering court under siege, greeted with a hail of boos from bystanders and a barrage of questioning from Depp's legal team.
You testified that your forearms were cut.
My forearms and my feet.
And your feet were sliced up.
That's correct.
And you testified you had a bruise across your jaw.
That is correct.
And there is not a single medical record reflecting treatment for any of those injuries, is there, Ms. Heard?
I didn't seek treatment.
Tensions boiling over on day 2 of Heard's cross-examination in the high-profile defamation suit brought on by Johnny Depp.
TMZ is the same outlet that you released the video of Mr. Depp attacking the kitchen cabinets the day before this deposition was taken, wasn't it?
I didn't do that. I don't know how to do that.
TMZ owns the copyright to that video now, doesn't it?
I have no idea.
Depp's team digging up past allegations of abuse in a prior relationship, which Heard denies.
You assaulted her at a Seattle airport in 2009, didn't you?
No, I did not.
And people saw that.
That's not true.
And it was covered in the press. Isn't that true?
It was planted in the press by Johnny's team 2 days after I got the TRO.
And pressing her on photos that Heard claims showed signs of abuse.
You just edited these photographs?
No, I've never edited a photograph.
Didn't you just enhance the saturation for one of these photos to make your face look more red?
No, that's incorrect.
Depp's attorneys playing more audio of the couple fighting, painting Heard as the aggressor.
You didn't mean to hit me in the head with the door, but you meant to punch me in the jaw.
I meant to hit you, and I did not do this thing with the door. I did mean to hit you.
And then you punched him in the jaw.
Defended myself in that audio. You can hear it for yourself.
Right. And then you punched him in the jaw.
I also did not do that.
And sharing video of Heard listening to the same audio in a 2016 deposition, smiling and rolling her eyes.
Is there something amusing to you about punching your husband in the jaw?
That is not what I was smiling about, and no, I do not think it's amusing.
The redirect eclipsed by a flurry of objections.
Guys,
objection, Your Honor. Leading. Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. Objection, Your Honor. calls for speculation and hearsay.
All this coming in week 5 of the $50 million lawsuit brought by Johnny Depp against Heard for her 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post, in which she describes herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. The article never names Depp, but his lawyers argue it clearly referenced him and crippled his career. Heard is countersuing for $100 million. Both Depp and Heard deny abusing each other.
I don't have any more questions, Your Honor. All right, thank you. All right.
Heard leaving the stand after 4 days of testimony, but not before getting emotional about why she believes Depp can't look at her.
Because he's guilty. Because he knows he's lying. Otherwise, why can't he look at me? I survived. I survived that man, and I'm here, and I'm able to look at him.
Some intense moments there in court. Steve Patterson joins us now from Los Angeles. So, Steve, another day of emotional testimony. I understand there are 2 other witnesses who testified through video deposition about violence from both parties.
Yeah, 2 others. Tom, Io Tillett-Wright, a friend of both Heard and Depp, testified that he saw Depp throw glasses and dishware on at least 2 occasions. And Raquel Pennington, a former close friend of Heard's, who admitted that Heard actually struck her during an argument between the 2. More of this tomorrow. Testimony resumes, and closing arguments are scheduled for May 25th.
All right, Steve
May
Patterson.
27th, excuse me.
Okay, thanks for that fix. Steve, we appreciate it. Next tonight, to fascinating new videos of UFOs, the Pentagon revealing the footage taken from a fighter jet during the first hearing on the topic in half a century. And officials say there have been hundreds of more reports. Gotti Schwartz explains.
Tonight, new video of a UFO shown to lawmakers in Congress, raising more questions than answers.
I do not have an explanation for what this specific object is.
The footage recorded from a fighter pilot's cell phone capturing a few frames of a metallic object.
UAPs are unexplained, it's true, but they are real. They need to be investigated, and many threats they pose need to be mitigated.
Pentagon officials using the video during a congressional hearing as an illustration of how hard it is to determine what the objects actually are. Last year, the Pentagon releasing a report looking into more than 140 cases of what they called unidentified aerial phenomena. Today, Pentagon officials said at least 18 cases included sensor data showing the objects behaving in ways they could not explain, but also releasing video of other cases they say are likely man-made drones appearing to swarm Navy ships during a series of incidents that involved an object seen dropping into the water.
What was splashed? Do we have any sensors underwater to detect on submerged UAPs?
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session, sir.
Intelligence committee members then briefed behind closed doors, while other members of Congress expressed frustration over a lack of answers.
I do not fear the American public knowing what we have. I would sure as heck like them to see it.
All right, Gotti joins us now from Capitol Hill. Gotti, it sounds as though the Pentagon thinks at least one of those videos shows something man-made, maybe a drone. Do they think that both of these videos released today could be man-made objects?
Yeah, so what we heard from the Pentagon was that the video from the night vision goggles, that appears to be possibly drones flying over these warships. And the reason why it looked like an upside-down triangle was because they were shooting with a DSLR through some night vision goggles, and that made some weird flare on the lenses. However, the other video, when you see the F-18 fly by something and there's a little metallic thing, they wouldn't answer what that was. They were asked by Congressman Adam Schiff, and they couldn't give him an answer, and that really underscores how dangerous this possibly could be. The craziest part of the whole hearing, for me at least, was when they said that there have been 11 near misses. And Tom, I know you've spent a little bit of time up in a fighter jet. You can imagine the fear that some pilots would have when you've got something metallic that is flying through the sky and they come as close as you saw in that video. Again, that video only showing just a few frames. We understand that there are longer video, more high quality video, and we also understand that there is higher sensor data that has been provided to members of Congress. There was a classified briefing after this, but so far as for what's been released publicly, all we've got so far today is those 2 videos. One is basically a debunking, and the other one just showing a few frames of an F-18 streaking past something metallic in the sky. Tom?
All right, Gotti Schwartz from Capitol Hill for us. Gotti, we thank you. When we come back, severe storm threat, a possible tornado stunning a driver in a place that rarely sees them, plus millions at risk for heavy rain and dangerous winds. The details next. All right, back now with Top Stories news feed and the manhunt for the killers of an 11-year-old girl in New York City. New surveillance video shows a man running from two people on a moped as they shot at him in broad daylight. Police say one of those bullets traveled half a block, hitting the child in the stomach. A $10,000 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest. And an Atlanta police officer was caught on camera saving an unresponsive baby. Take a look at this body cam video showing the intense moments. A woman flags down an officer saying the 4-month-old wasn't breathing. Police say the officer couldn't find a pulse, so he immediately notified dispatch and began CPR, at one point just using his thumb. The baby's pulse came back by the time the ambulance arrived. That infant is doing okay tonight. And a possible tornado in a place that doesn't usually see them. Take a look at this. It's dash cam video capturing what looks like a twister touching down in Charleston, New Hampshire. This is last night. There's going to be more severe storms this week. At this hour, millions in the plains and Midwest are at risk for heavy rain and flash flooding. We will keep an eye on that. Okay, we want to turn now back to that shooting in Buffalo, where experts are questioning what could have been done to stop it. New York has a red flag law in place meant to quickly get guns out of the hands of people deemed at risk. But that wasn't used here, even though the Buffalo shooter was investigated less than a year ago. So what went wrong? Tom Winter reports.
Tonight, from police to prosecutors to school administrators and to the alleged shooter's family, tough questions are being asked about what more could have been done to prevent 10 black people from being shot dead by an alleged racially motivated killer in Buffalo, New York. Some experts now questioning how the 18-year-old suspect was able to possess a legally purchased assault rifle allegedly used in the killings just less than a year after officials investigated him over threats he allegedly made while in school. In New York, extreme risk protection orders, more commonly referred to as red flag orders, are designed to give law enforcement, schools, and families the power to ask a judge to take someone's guns or prevent them from buying new ones if that person poses a threat to themselves or others. But a state police spokesperson says in this case, nobody asked for such order.
I was shocked to learn that the police did not apply for an extreme risk order here. What it says to me is that we need to have more training for law enforcement and for others who are able to use this powerful tool so that they know in what circumstances it's appropriate, what the processes are.
So-called red flag laws are fairly new across the nation. 19 states and the District of Columbia have them, with a majority adopting the law after the 2018 Parkland shooting in Florida. Since New York's red flag law went into effect in August 2019, over 1,400 extreme risk protection orders have been issued, and research shows they help reduce gun violence. Still, this latest shooting, a clear sign that some cases can slip through the cracks.
They interviewed the individual, and they ultimately determined that they were going to bring him in for a mental health evaluation. And it was about a day and a half when the individual was released.
This isn't a matter of bringing people into mental health care facilities. This is about whether they are allowed to possess weapons. And it's something that is moved forward with, even if it's determined this person doesn't have mental health issues.
One development in this case that's not in question, a commitment from law enforcement and New York Governor Kathy Hochul to conduct a full review of what happened in the hope of preventing future heartache. Tom, it's not entirely clear that a protective order could have stopped this alleged shooter. Possible loopholes? Well, these orders are not permanent, and only future gun sales involving background checks are affected.
Tom Winter for us. All right, we have an update tonight. Another deadly shooting, also investigated as a hate crime. Dallas police arrested a suspect in connection to last week's hair salon shooting that left 3 women of Korean descent injured. Steve Romo has more details.
I'm relieved to say that we have made an arrest.
Tonight, the Koreatown community in Dallas exhaling. A suspect accused of a shooting at an Asian-owned hair salon is in custody.
And charge him with 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
The shooting, now being investigated as a hate crime by the FBI, injured 3 women of Korean descent. Now, the Dallas Police Department sharing more details on the suspect, Jeremy Smith.
2 years ago, Smith had a motor vehicle crash with an Asian male.
Since then, his arrest affidavit stating he reportedly suffers from delusions that the Asian mob is after him or attempting to harm him, even getting fired from his last job for verbally assaulting an Asian boss. Dallas police saying there are 2 similar shootings linked to Asian businesses which are still under investigation.
There was a connection between those shootings and that a maroon or red vehicle was driven by the unknown suspect. More work or investigation needs to be done before Smith can be charged in those cases.
The community feeling the effects of that violence. Business owners telling our NBC station KXAS their business dropped 50% during the manhunt.
Community leaders and business owners here, they are scared to go to work.
At a community meeting earlier this week, one of the victims speaking for the first time.
She's just, happy that we're all here today.
Sharing she's finally starting to feel better after the trauma she's been through, a healing process the entire community is also just beginning.
People are afraid. Even they're eating, they're looking around. People are afraid they're going to get shot.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now live here on Top Story. So, Stephen, we heard the term there being used, hate crime. Is it going to be prosecuted this way?
That's a question many people are asking. We heard from Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia. He used the term hate crime many times today, saying that the community certainly sees this as a hate crime and that he himself sees this as a hate crime. But the arrest affidavit also uses the term delusion, so it's not really clear how they'll end up prosecuting this. We do know, though, the FBI is looking into this as a potential hate crime.
Yeah, it seems like the evidence is pointing that way, at least according to police. All right, Stephen, great to have you on the show. Now to Top Stories Global Watch. We begin with the ongoing economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Signs saying no petrol at gas stations in the capital, Colombo. The new prime minister warned Monday that the country was down, get this, to its last day of fuel. Sri Lanka is also facing shortages of medicine and other essentials. The country is on the brink of bankruptcy. And Nestle says it's flying baby formula supplies to the U.S. from the Netherlands and Switzerland. The company says it's moving Gerber and Alfamino baby formula to help with the shortage in American supermarkets. Those were chosen because they are for babies with an allergy to cow's milk protein. Okay, we move now to the Americas, and the Biden administration is planning to lift restrictions on Cuba set in place by President Trump. The changes include expanding visa processing and lifting the cap on money being sent into the island, but the move is drawing criticism in Washington, including from the president's own party. NBC's Ed Augustin is in Havana tonight.
Tonight, Cubans making sense of new guidelines as the Biden administration announced plans to reverse some Trump-era restrictions on the island. The changes are Biden's most significant diplomatic efforts towards Cuba, his first moves towards fulfilling his campaign promises on the issue. U.S. commercial flights will again be allowed to land in airports outside the capital, Havana. A cap on the money families in the U.S. can send back home has been lifted. And visa processing on the island, which had been suspended in recent years, is slowly being expanded. On the streets of Havana, Cubans reacting to the policy change.
Esto es lo mejor que ha pasado, que abran esta embajada aquí.
Ya muchas promesas se han dado anteriormente y seguimos en las mismas.
But the move has been met with harsh criticism in Washington.
You're seeing the beginning of a movement back towards Obama-era policies towards Cuba that were a massive failure.
And even from some in Biden's own party, including Senator Bob Menendez, the powerful chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who said he was dismayed the changes allow travel akin to tourism in the communist-ruled country.
Most Democrats were very supportive of Obama's policy of normalizing relations, and there were a number of farm state Republicans who also supported it because it meant an expansion of trade with Cuba that would benefit their constituents.
President Biden was Obama's VP when the U.S. normalized relations with its Cold War foe some 7 years ago. That rapprochement bulldozed by the Trump administration, which, citing Cuba's long history of human rights abuses, imposed over 200 sanctions on the island. Cuba's food and medical shortages from years of mismanagement under communist rule were amplified with new sanctions and the pandemic. The Biden administration insists these measures aim to support the Cuban people. But for those living on the island, the changes won't make life that much easier. While the cap on remittances has been lifted, how do families send that help? Prior to 2020, people used Western Union, but that's no longer an option, as Trump-era sanctions ban dealings with the one Cuban company that processes remittances. And the visas? While the embassy's consular office in Havana is now being restaffed, most Cubans will still have to fly to Guyana in South America just for a visa interview. Despite these limitations, the changes do represent a significant shift in policy, which may make life a touch less grinding.
This is a big improvement in U.S.-Cuban relations compared to the Trump administration and to the first 15 months of the Biden administration, where we were in a period of almost maximum hostility. These measures return us to a policy of engagement.
The move with Cuba comes at a time of strained relations with Latin America. In just a few weeks, President Biden is set to host the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, after he indicated that Cuba, Venezuela and Nicaragua would be banned from the event. Over a dozen leaders of Latin American and Caribbean countries have threatened to boycott the summit. Analysts say that yesterday's measures could be designed to placate them. Tom.
Ed Augustin from Havana tonight. Ed, thank you for that. Coming up, average prices at the pump topping $4 basically everywhere in the U.S. A lot of people want to know, is the end of this surge in sight? We're talking to someone who tracks gas prices after this break. All right, we are back now with gas prices surging across the U.S. The national average hitting $4.53 a gallon, but prices in California topping a record $6 a gallon. Patrick DeHaan joins us now. He's the head of petroleum research at Gas Buddy. Patrick, the average is more than $4.50 a gallon and rising. This is what you do day in, day out. You track these prices. You're an expert in this field. Is there any end in sight?
Well, Tom, it's not looking terrific. Is there an end in sight? Not so much yet. Things could continue to worsen here in the days ahead. Oil prices continue to go up. Americans hitting the road in more frequent and higher numbers as we approach Memorial Day weekend. Demand is up, supply is down, and that's pushing gas prices up to new all-time records just in time for Memorial Day.
So prices are going up, Patrick. Have you noticed any type of evidence of any sort of drop in demand? And I ask that in the sense that, are people driving less because the prices are so high?
It doesn't look like that yet. In fact, Gas Buddy data showed that U.S. gasoline consumption last week was up about 3%. In light of record high prices, that's insurmountable. That is, Americans not responding to the high price. We're certainly very vocal about it, at least on social media, complaining about high prices, but the numbers don't yet back that up. And that's certainly a concern ahead of the summer, that if Americans don't slow down in the face of high prices, those prices will continue to go up until demand goes down.
Yeah, we're about to hit that summer driving season. You know, I want to transition now to talk about jet fuel and diesel. Some out there are predicting a serious crisis, that essentially the U.S. could run out or run very low of both jet fuel and diesel during the summer travel season. What are you seeing out there, and what do you think is going to happen this summer going into the new year?
Well, there are some tremendous challenges, especially for jet fuel and diesel fuel in the Northeast. We've lost 2 refineries that serve the Northeast. 2019, a fire at a Philadelphia refinery, and COVID shutting down a refinery in Canada. Diesel and jet fuel very much in trouble there. We could be looking at physical disruptions. That could happen. Of course, the Russia situation making things worse. Russian oil generally yields more of that heavy product like diesel. Amidst a economic recovery in the U.S. and elsewhere, there certainly could be far more problems for both of those, diesel and jet fuel, in the months ahead. Do
you see a situation, though, where we're in a real crisis where airlines have to basically stop flying because they don't have enough jet fuel?
I don't see that happening yet. I think they are continuing to pass along the increase in terms of airfares. I was looking at some prices, Chicago to Cancun now over $1,000 depending on date. So airlines passing along those higher fares, and that's certainly going to sap motorists' wallet even more this summer.
Patrick DeHaan from Gas Buddy with the grim realities on the gas situation here in the U.S. Patrick, thank you. Still to come, finding their voice. A former student sharing his story to help a debate coach that changed his life. The major way the online community rallied behind them. We'll be right back. Finally tonight, a former debate student finding his voice and sharing how a high school teacher changed his life. That story going viral on the popular Instagram page, Humans of New York, and now changing that teacher's life as well.
New York City high school debate coach K.M. Dico-Landria has a simple argument.
There's no such thing as tough kids. It's kids who are going through something tough.
Dico-Landria, who goes by Dico, has spent more than a decade teaching high school speech and debate in the city. One of those kids who was going through something tough was Jonathan Conyers. At the age of 14, he joined Dico's debate club after a run-in with law enforcement. He went on to compete in debate at Ivy League tournaments and earned a college scholarship, attributing his success to Dico's persistence and encouragement.
I want to be people's Dico. I want to continue to give back to my community.
Deco has continued to be a leader in New York City's public school speech and debate community, starting the Brooklyn Debate League as a way to fight inequity in schools.
And I didn't think it was fair that folks that already had the financial means and probably were going to the fancier schools were getting this heads up in middle school.
But going up against the wealthier schools takes money, and Deco was financing the league with thousands of his own savings.
We were broke. I had poured money into this. We were under broke.
So that's when Jonathan reached out to the popular Instagram page Humans of New York, sharing the personal details of his story with the page's millions of followers.
It was the biggest way I think I can really dedicate this to Deco.
Brandon Stanton, the photographer behind Humans of New York, started a GoFundMe for Deco's Debate League.
The people of New York and around the world have stepped up and shown their love.
In just 1 week, that fundraiser exceeding its goal, raising $1.3 million for Deco and the Brooklyn Debate League. The league plans to use the funds to expand into public schools around the city.
The sky's the limit. Let's go. Let's do all the things we wanted to do.
Two Humans of New York finding their voices through debate, now hoping to level the playing field for the next generation.
Incredible how much money they raised, and a good reminder to support your local speech and debate teams. They do a lot of great work with students. All right, that does it for us. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.